So Christian's going to be talking to us about Moodle and making it student-centered, student-led. Which term would you use?
Student-centered.
Student-centered. Shall I say about the laptops, or are you going to say about that?
What about the laptops?
If people wanted to work along.
Oh yeah, if you do, at the end of this, we'll do some work, and if you want to work along, pull out your laptop if you have it with you. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm going to start with talking about what student-centered learning is. Everybody knows this already, especially if you've been in education for a while. It's a word that's floated around. I don't know when it first came out, but it's been around for a long time. But I think that sometimes it's forgotten exactly what it means, because I don't see a lot of it going on at universities. Also, it challenges the existing technical capacities that we have. So let's go back through student-centered learning. Hopefully this will be a review for everyone. Okay. So first of all, the student is the agent in her learning process. Yeah. Which means that she is the agent of her own teaching, right? Not only of the learning, but of her own teaching. So we can do something that we call teaching, but there's another layer of teaching that's going on that the student is doing with and to herself. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so what is one way of understanding learning and teaching? Well, it is a movement through a space that one theorist a long time ago, Lev Vygotsky, called the zone of proximal development, which I call the ZOPED. Some people call it ZPD, whatever, so I'll just call it the ZOPED. Yeah? Okay. So we have a place at which the student is at currently in his knowledge, and then we have a place that we want the student to be in his knowledge, and there's going to be a movement from here to here, okay? And I think of this spatially because I think of learning as a relationship. So who's going to enter into that space? If you want to use a theatrical metaphor, it works as well. Who are the characters that are involved on this stage of zone of proximal development? Well, at the very least, we have the teacher and the student. Okay. So if the teacher is simply teaching something, the student is not involved in that, then you don't have the student present. So like lecture. If the student is left to do something, and I've seen classes like that around here where the student is left to do something, okay, here's a prompt, now make something with that, and then at the end you do a reflection. That's not teaching, that's not learning, right? So that's ignoring the student, okay? So student-centered teaching is when both the teacher and the student are in the space or on the stage of the zone of proximal development and are engaged, okay? So in the ZOPED, at least 4 things are going to happen. More than that, probably, but at least 4 things. First of all, knowledge is going to be added to existing knowledge. So this is quantitative. Old knowledge is going to be re-experienced and reread using new eyes. So as you gain new knowledge or gain new frameworks, which we'll go into down here, you go back and look at old knowledge that you had and you reread it using new eyes. Another way to think about it, if any of you know psychoanalytic theory, is you're carrying this knowledge from the past to the present, and it's going to pop up again, it's going to repeat for you to work it through. Sometimes that knowledge is something that you didn't understand back then. You know? For example, when I was 15, I was handed in an English class Tale of Two Cities. I had no idea what was going on in that text. And I would raise my hand and I would say, well, I think this is going on. And the teacher would say, no. And I would say, Mary, do you know what's going on? And Mary would raise her hand. She would say, yes, that's correct, Mary. And that was my initial English education. Now I'm reading the text again, right? And I'm reliving all that trauma from Taft High School. Okay. Existing categories of understanding are going to be reshuffled and remade and restocked. So this is qualitative, and if any of you know Piaget's work, right? So this is a change in the way that we frame our knowledge, and I'll get into that more in a second. Then new categories and new frameworks are going to be created in the zone of proximal development, and that's generative. we're generating new categories. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to say, if you would like this note, I will email it to you. So either hand me on a piece of paper your email address or email me. So I'm christian.smith@Warwick.ac.uk, and then I'll email you this note from my Evernote. Okay. The other character that's going to enter into the zone of proximal development is are the teaching materials. So in English, that would be the text that we read. In whatever field you work in, that would be whatever tools you are learning, whether they be books or labs or chemicals or whatever you're working with. So that's entering into as well, and taking a relational position with the other characters. Yeah. Now this relationship can either be alienating or empowering, right? And what's at stake in this for Vygotsky, who was a Bolshevik, who was a Marxist, is that if you teach in an alienating manner, you will contribute to creating an alienating society. If you teach in an empowering manner, which I'm defining as student-centered, you will contribute to a society in which the individuals are empowered and, won't take it anymore. So that's what's at stake. That's what we're doing. We're changing society. Nothing less than that with the way we're teaching. Okay, let's consider knowledge addition. Yeah. So if I tell you something and I say, okay, what can I tell you? Ariel Dorfman is an author, and he wrote a play called Death and the Maiden. Okay, you've heard this, right? Like the penis, right? That's what you've heard. Okay, now you have to translate that. Now you have to do something with that. That's on the physiological level, on a psychological level, on the level of mental functioning. All right. And that translation is you teaching yourself, right? Because I could say that to everybody in this room, and if I asked you an hour later, what was that piece of knowledge I just gave to you, you're probably all going to come up with different ideas, maybe different words, maybe something wildly different, because what it may have done is triggered something else in your mind. Yeah. So you are teaching yourself as you're listening, even to a lecture, you're teaching yourself. Yeah. Okay, reading old knowledge. By definition, this rereading of old knowledge can only be done by the student. It can only be student-centered, unless the teacher has a long relationship with the student, which sometimes occurs. For example, primary school teachers may be or may know a student going through the grades. Or unless the teacher is working in a psychotherapeutic way, which is possible for psychologists, school psychologists, and stuff like that. Okay. Alteration of existing categories and schemas. So this is Piaget's accommodation, right? So this is the wow-wows and the moo-moos. Yeah, so the kid sees a thing there with some legs and a tail and a head. And the mom says, wow, 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 it's a wow, wow. And the kid says, oh, that's a wow, wow, right? And then they're driving one day and they see a thing with 4 legs and a tail and a head. And the kid says, look, the wow, wows. And the mom says, no, that's a moo-moo. So this is a wow, wow, and that's a moo-moo. Okay, so now the kid has to create different categories. It's not just about the legs and the tails, right? You will all know this when you go to the zoo. And you go to that part where all the antelope are, right? And some of them are antelope, and some of them are gazelles, and some of them are springboks, and some of what is all this? I have no idea. A biologist would know. Right? A biologist would know exactly what they are because he or she would say, okay, that's this species and that's that species. But to most of us, they're antelope. They're wow-wows. Okay. When we learn biology, then we would start to take on those new categories. So that's part of what's going on in the teaching process. We're creating these new categories of knowledge. And they are a result of neuronal interactions in the brain. Yeah, so that, you're reaching into the brain when you're teaching. Yeah. Okay, generation of new categories. Teachers and texts can suggest this process. Like I could say to students in my classes, I could say, okay, now we're going to look at this text from a Marxist perspective or from an eco-critical perspective. Yeah? And the student can hear, okay, eco-critical. Okay, that's it. That's all that is, right? The student now has to go away and work with that concept. Oh, climate change, right. This text might be saying something about our relationship to the earth, and I can use that to make a statement about climate change. right? But maybe some other student says, yeah, eco-critical vegetarianism. Right? So each student's going to have a different perspective on it, okay? And that can only be inside the student. We can suggest the categories, yeah? So that's student-centered learning. And I'll go into this in a second, but before I go on, does anybody have a question or a comment or a thought about what I just said? Go ahead. How did you process all that I just said?
Christian, perhaps the important point, am I right in thinking that you're really saying there's no such thing as teaching, there's only learning?
Well, there is such a thing as teaching. That's the part where the teacher enters into the zone of proximal development and does some sort of moves, which might include saying to somebody, go to this place in the Moodle and do this particular exercise. Or that might include listening to the person and at exactly the right moment saying, eco-criticism. And the student says, that's what I'm working with, right? So it could be any of those. So that's the teaching bit. The learning bit is another layer that's going on. That's another layer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's have at least one more comment.
Probably the best explanation of Vygotsky's theory I've ever heard in my career, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've never fully understood quite all this zone of proximal development, but I do now.
Is there something about it that grabbed you, that grabbed your mind and said,
It was the analogy of there being a physical space rather than up here. I think that was the thing that made it.
Yeah. So maybe the theatrical metaphor might work, where you pull it out, turn off the lights, you have a spotlight, and there you are, the student, the text, and we're characters in a play. What kind of play is this going to be? Yeah. Okay, cool. In recent times, because I've been thinking about education for a long time, but not about digital humanities and digital education for a long time. That's rather new for me. But in recent times, I've been finding that many of the digital tools that we have are very useful for creating the space for student-centered learning. And that's why I've gravitated towards them, not because I'm a geek, I'm not a geek, I know very little about this. But I've gravitated towards it because it's been a space where I can do the kind of teaching and learning that I'm interested in doing. And so that's why we're going to be talking about using one of these services. I have another video with Window on teaching on using Evernote, which is developing more and more and more because Evernote itself is developing and the way that I use it is developing. So today I'm going to talk about using Moodle. Okay. I'm going to go into a little bit of stuff that I know very little about, but I'll just tell you what I do know, because I don't know about coding. So this is what I understand. First of all, Moodle was created with social constructivism in mind. And so social constructivism is one of the theories that's behind the notion of student-centered learning. Okay? So this tool was created out of that movement, right? And that's one of the reasons why it fits very well for this movement. Okay, so a dynamic learning environment, it's an environment for learning that can be manipulated and can be changed. It can be changed by the teacher and it can be changed by the student. And who does that and how much percentage of that is done by one or the other is part of what we're going to be talking about today. If it is only changed by the teacher, so if you put up something for the students to look at, and then they look at it and they do nothing on it but just look at it, right? Kind of like some of the MOOCs today, yeah? That's not student-centered learning. Yeah, that's a video on YouTube, nothing more, okay? If it can be changed by the student, then we're headed now towards student-centered learning, all right? And there is a possibility for creating a MOOC in which the students are doing most of the work on there, okay? That'll be our most radical position, which we'll end with today. Okay, object-oriented. Here I'm a little bit out of my field, but let's see what I can do with it. This is data-driven programming. Yeah. The data before action, so we're looking at processes. An object is an instance of data, a piece of data. Modular refers to the encapsulation of that data. and all of the knowledge of what is meant to be done with the data, that makes up that data type. If it is modularized, then changes can easily be made to the processes. In the Moodle, components, tools, blocks of the Moodle are encapsulations of data and processes that fit together and can be rearranged. Don't quote me on that. Ish. Okay? Okay. Now, what is the function of a Moodle? So it's a place to stage learning online, and it can be used as a support to existing face-to-face learning encounters. I don't do distance teaching. I suppose you could do it using a Moodle, but that's not what I do. I have people in lectures, students in lectures, and I have students in seminars, and I have students working with me on the Moodle. So we have 3 locations in many of these classes where we're working. And I recently was looking at some stuff about Twitter, which I think Mark Kerrigan put up, if I have his name right, about how live tweeting at conferences, live tweeting between the participants causes a kind of a back-channel discussion that goes on, which parallels the official tweeting that's going on. This can also work in that way, in which the students are having a back-channel discussion. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's good. It's additive. And it's the space where they can be doing a lot of their work that they don't necessarily do sitting in a large 200-student lecture hall. Yeah? Okay. I'm going to talk about 4 different types of ways of organizing a Moodle. One way, which is the least student-centered, is where the teacher front-loads resources. And I'm going to show you one that I do for a master's class, which is this one. Okay, so this is a master's Shakespeare class, and the students are doing research papers there. And so what I've done, I'm using the grid format here, so behind each of these boxes here they'll find information. What I've done is I've placed information behind these boxes that they can go and search on their own. I don't tell them what to go look for. I just say, if you want that information for your paper, it's there. Okay. So, for example, if we look at the general, I've placed a number of databases, websites, places to look, blogs, places to look. And I can say, oh yeah, well that's an article in Shakespeare Survey, so I just put it right there. I mean, they could find that in the library, but I put it there for them to go to. Okay. I've also used, I think it's here, I've also used a book tool here to put a listing of an overview of Shakespeare's texts. So, for example, if I want them to know what all the history plays are, I've listed it there in a chapter, so these are chapters, yeah? And I've listed all the history plays and the probable dates, yeah? Maybe I want them to know about collaboration and canonicity. This is a new aspect of the field of Shakespeare studies. So here I have some text that I've written that I've gotten from a place, from a book. Yeah? Maybe I want them to think about what the Greek plays are, which plays are set in Greek. So it's different ways that I look at the plays and I say, let's look at this from the point of view of plays that are set in Greece, plays that have characters that are working with alternate genders, and I'll put that up there, or plays with animals, plays with kids, yeah. So this is the simplest. It's a resource, they can use it, I don't guide them on it, they use it on their own, I use it for my master's students. Is there anything else? It's non-assessed, their work on there is non-assessed. Oh yeah, I'll show you something else I did which Jim helped me, Jim Judges, raise your hand, Jim Judges, yeah, our Moodle czar here, helped me. This is Reading the Roots of Modernity in the Ruins. I don't know where the name went. I did a field trip to Kenilworth Castle, and Jim gave me an ad hoc MOOC where I could put information. And so as we were walking along, the students could access the MOOC on their smartphone, and we're standing in Abbey Fields where there's no Abbey, and they could look, I think right here, I have the drawings of the Abbey, and they can just look at it and walk on. So it's like a little guide. So I use the MOOC as a guide, okay? So that's a resource way of using it. Okay, any questions on the resource? Does that make sense? Okay. We could also use a MOOC as a series of progressive steps of learning tasks. Okay, so this is a module in which you're concerned with the students working through the module in a certain way. All right. And I use this for my literature and psychoanalysis class. Psychoanalysis is a very, very difficult field in literary studies. It's very nuanced. There's a lot to it. You can't understand that until you understand this. Yeah. So there's a path that I want the students to take through. We've set up the module in that way. And so what I'm doing here is giving them a weekly set of tasks. Okay, there's the homie Freud. And give them a little introduction. We've got some images that they can look at. We've got our information for their essays. That's all resource stuff. Now, here's the meat of the class. Okay, so in term 1, week 1, they're going to click on here and they're going to get an introduction written by the convener of the class, John Fletcher, about what they're going to be looking at. Then they're going to click on here and they're going to be told what to read. All right? Some of what they're going to read we can put up depending on copyright. The library does that for us. Yeah. And then on here I have the lecture. He's done his lectures ahead of time and the students can listen to the lecture on their own time, on their smartphone, on their tablet, their computer, wherever. Right? And then I have some pictures that I might say during seminar. I will have this up during seminar. Yeah. And I have some pictures and I'll say, all right, you know, that thing about Charcot's Hospital, well, you know, there it is, and I click on it, and they can look at it. So this is called, what's it called, Lightbox Gallery?
Yeah.
Lightbox Gallery, right? So it's got these little thumbnails on it, and you can put the pictures, and then you click on the picture, and it comes up, right? So I have this on behind me during my seminars, right? This is paralleling the work that we're doing, okay? Now, let's go to... So we'll come down here, let's just say, let's try this one. Okay, so here is John's introduction. At the bottom, we write the student presentations. And I have it coded by the 3 seminars. So this is what the students are asked to present on. And they can go and look and see their assignment. And then the students upload their presentation on the forum, right? So during seminar, when the student says, Amber says, okay, I'm going to do my presentation on the primal scene, I just click on that, and then that opens up. And since all the students, I encourage them to have their laptops open. It's on their laptop. They don't need to be taking notes. I mean, they could if they wanted, but, you know, it's all right there, okay? So notice that this is very controlled. It's because of the certain... the type of teaching that I'm doing here, but within it, this is the student-centered bit because what drives, or the content of the seminars, are the student presentations. So there's 4 or 5 presentations per seminar, and that's what they're doing, and they put it all up here. Okay, so they're not doing anything special with the Moodle itself as a tool. We're going to get to that in a second. What they're doing is using it as a place to put their presentations, which then we can talk about during the seminar. Yeah? Let me see on this. So, it's when I look at it or something. So it's assessed for content, or it could be non-assessed. So by what I mean assess for content, it's assessed for this content right here. We can assess them in participation or in their presentations. Okay, but it's not necessarily assessed for how you use the digital tool. But we're headed there on the continuum. We're moving there. Okay. Okay, the next one is the one that at the moment I'm most excited about, and that's as a standalone space for learning, and that's the Modernity Clinic, which is a part of a module called Modern World Literatures. So there's the module. The module is convened by Nick Lawrence, and I'm one of the tutors on it, and I created the Moodle. So what we have here is a number of spaces in which the students can go in and interact with this very, very difficult concept that we're trying to get them to learn. And that concept is modernity. What is modernity in modern world literatures, right? So that Zoped is pretty big on what is modernity, right? Partly because it's a contested term. Right? It's not a simple term. Oh, well, it's this. No, it's not a very simple term. It's a contested term, and we want the students to stage their contestation, their debate on this Moodle. Yeah? Okay, so I'll show you some of the processes that they can go through. We've put up some paragraphs from people. So let's take Michel Foucault. What is enlightenment? So this is a paragraph that one of our tutors pulled out, and he said, okay, this is enlightenment. We've asked the students, we've required the students twice, at least 100 words per term, okay, to go in here, read that paragraph, and respond to it. So let's take this one here. So she's going to respond here, and then he's going to respond to hers, and then she's going to respond to his and hers. So we're staging a debate, because modernity is conflictive, is debatable, and we hope that it's democratic. So we're actually staging a democratic intellectual debate going on here. I'm not marking them for what they say. I'm only assessing them for having entered into the arena with us, right? So we call this a participation grade, or participation mark. Okay? Well, not all students do well with something they read. Maybe they might like something to listen to and watch. So that's our convener speaking for about 8 minutes on the issues of modernity. And what we've asked the students to do is to comment on that. And so there they are. Now, you'll see a problem here. There's no replies yet. So part of the problem here is that I had a really busy term. And I wasn't able to get in and reply to them. I was able to reply to other ones. We have hundreds of posts. I mean, we probably have 600-700 posts on here if I were to go through all of it and show it to you, okay? But some of them I missed, and that's the problem. And one of the things I would like to require, although they're already overworked, is I would like to require that all of the tutors on this module go on the Moodle and reply. So that is the teaching bit, where you get in there into the Zoped with the student and reply. So, you know, whatever Victoria is going to say, I want to go in there and engage. Not replying to a student, ignoring a student, I think, following the work of Wilhelm Reich, is almost worse than oppressing a student. I mean, at least if you say to a student, no, you're wrong, don't ever say that again or you'll be arrested, at least the student says, ooh, well, I'm somebody. But if you just say nothing to a student, it's bad, okay? So we want replies. We want to connect our thinking and the students' thinking in the Zoped.
Christian, is there
Yeah.
a reason that in the previous one there were student replies. Is there a reason for that one there weren't any student replies to the student
It's
remarks?
just, I think it's just what I got to, let's see what was going on with, let's see if Stevens. This one got 1, 2, this one got a little bit more. I mean, Stevens starts out and he says, modernity, capitalism is modernity. And that immediately gets the students going, you know, and they start to talk about it. Okay, so something else that I do on here is I asked, now we didn't do this much this year, but last year we did a lot. I asked the students to put keywords on there. So while they're in lecture and we say, okay, flaneur, okay, what's a flaneur? Somebody's defining that. The student actually in lecture can put that definition right into the Moodle. This is not completely supported yet by the conveners, because some of the conveners have a problem with laptops open, right? If we're going to go and use digital tools, we need to be okay with laptops open. In fact, we need to be okay with the fact that students are sometimes on Facebook. It's all right. You know what? Because they are partly listening to us. They are partly listening to us. We need to be okay if we're okay with live tweeting in conferences. We need to be okay with the fact that some students might be tweeting during a lecture. I know a lecturer at Nottingham that tweets. His students tweet his classes as they're happening. I mean, it's a whole event that's going on. It's a whole tweet fest that's going on. Okay, this one got a lot of work. Images of modernity. So some of the images were placed on there by, okay, there we got flaneurs. Some of the images were placed by the tutors. So a flaneur, that's what we're talking about, flaneurs. And some students replied. So we have a reply from a student here. Oh, okay, so I've gone. Okay, so let's just see how I would reply to this. Thanks for starting the discussion, Tiff. Your last question begs a definition of the flaneur. So I've, put a challenge into her, right? Can someone do this for us? Define the flaneur and reply to this. We haven't had this lecture yet. Oh, that came before the lecture. But you should be able to find it in a search on the internet. The answer to your question is no, a flaneur is not any person living in the modern age, but the truth that underlies your statement. You see the difference in saying you're wrong and saying it's not what you're saying, but there is a truth that underlies your statement. Let me pull it out, right? So if here was a Zopad, that student's like there. And I say, but there is a truth that underlies your statement. That allows a student to move a little bit along, okay? And then we had people speaking to it below that, all right? There's something else going on in the images that I was particularly excited about because it's our most popular feature on the modernity clinic. And that's student posts. So this is student-centered learning. This is student-centered using the Moodle in their own way. If you see something that you think can be an image of modernity, snap a picture of it. They've all got, most of them have phones, right? And post it to this forum. You can do that using the image file picker that shows up on the toolbar. Hover your mouse, and I tell them how to do it, okay? Start the discussion, yeah? Now, some of these students just took images off the web, but some of them actually took pictures with their phone that they could talk about. Let's see. I know there was one with a rubbish bin or something. Was it this one? Could have been this one. Okay. So this student here somewhere saw a picture of a rubbish bin next to a tree and said, well, that's an interesting composition there. I can do something with that, right? And she starts, after listening to Nick Lawrence's short talk on modernity, yes, they're looking at it, right? And they're now starting to use it. I was considering the contradiction that. I love that word contradiction because that's what modernity is made up of, contradictions, right? And she goes on and has a discussion and other people can speak back to her, Okay, so you have them use their tools to upload imagery that they see, and then begin the discussion. So they're framing the discussion, the student is framing the discussion. Okay, I think that's good on that one. Does anybody have questions or comments on that so far? And then I will go to this last one here that I'm thinking of.
Just something, I guess, is time always, isn't it? You know, you talk about we get our ICT students to make blogs, and the issue is they're all supposed to comment on each other's blogs, so it's the same sort of idea as this, but they don't. Yeah, they barely. We struggle to get them to write their own blogs.
Right.
And it's part of the assignment. We put them in blog buddies, so they're supposed to comment on each other, at least each other's blogs. And I'm wondering whether we really need to, as tutors, be. You know, we've kind of resisted commenting. One of the students at the end of last term sort of plaintively was writing all these Facebook posts saying, please somebody comment on my blog. And it's exactly what you're saying about, you know, it's kind of ignoring them. You ask them to do something which ostensibly is a public, collaborative thing. But if they're not collaborating with anyone, it sort of does feel like you're talking in the...
I mean, there's a couple of ways of dealing with that. One way is to require them to comment. So make that part of the time they're going to spend in the course anyways. And then you figure that into the rest of the work. So I think it's time to take digital technology from being on the sidelines of education to making it one of the tools that's in the center of education, right? You're writing an essay, okay, that's been in the center of education. Okay, you're also working on a Moodle or tweeting even, or something like that. Let's make that one of the tasks, all right? I think the other thing is that if you get an interesting conversation going, these students are bright, right? They're gonna be interested in it. They're gonna want to get in there, you know, and talk about it. And we see that happening in some of these, not in all of them, but in some of them, you know. Okay, another thought or question? Yeah.
How do you assess?
So for this one, what I'm assessing for is whether they're there or not. On my Evernote, you know, whether they show up and write anything. So it's a participation, okay? On my Evernote, what I do is I have them, for example, they do their bibliography. They have to do their bibliography and cite correctly using MLA. So then they're getting an actual mark for that, and they upload that onto the Evernote. They put their presentations on there. We run the whole seminar between the Moodle and the Evernote. I mean, nobody's writing anything.
Where does the quality of their work come in?
Yeah, so for the bibliography, the quality of the work is have they done the MLA citation correctly. For their presentations, the quality of the work is, are they getting into the issues they've been asked to get into? Okay. Obviously, Tabula is a digital tool, and you're putting your essays on there and assessing the quality, you know. So, and there can be a flow between a seamless flow at some point. We're working towards that, right? Between all of these different tools. Yeah.
How many students do you have on average on a module like this?
This particular module has 200 and some students in it. And it's broken down into groups of 10 or so in the seminars, and we have a lot of tutors. Lit and Psych has between 40 and 60. I think we had 45 this year. My master's module had like 8.
So there are 200 students. How many posts do you have on?
Hundreds. Because we have a lot of different, we also have text. I haven't shown you the whole thing. We also have the text going on. All the texts have places for them to post. So we have hundreds of posts on there.
So you structure them according to components of the module?
I structured them.
Otherwise you get sort of...
Yeah, I structured the, you mean the, are you...
I mean, you don't see 100 straight away, right? I mean,
Right. Are you talking about how I structured this?
No, in terms of what you don't want is sort of a really long discussion list with hundreds and hundreds of...
Oh, I don't control where they post. They can post anywhere. I let them go anywhere because some students will like posting to a video. Some students will like grappling with a paragraph. Some students want to work with the image. Some students are working, we have all the text here underneath this one. Some students like working with the text. So there's different ways of working with it. Yeah, so we have all the text there. And some of these have comments in them, some of them don't. It depends on.
Do you have any issues with students who've got different levels of ability with using Moodle?
Absolutely.
So what do you think about that?
I mean, we have some students that are, like technophobic.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And what we do is they come into my office and I listen to them. Because, so here's the Zoped, right? They're over there. Right? And so to get the student from there to the door, I may need to sit with the student for a while in the office. I mean, obviously, if it's an issue that is, so great, that is affecting the students, it could be a mental health issue, then you refer. You refer to counseling services. But sometimes you can handle it by just sitting with the student. I have a student who can't see. And so we've worked out a way where she can send me her posts and I'll post them for her. Sometimes you have students who, for whatever reason, just don't have internet access for a little bit. So yeah, those are some of the issues. Okay, I'm going to show you now where I think we could go with this, which is a fully student-produced space for learning. Okay? And what I mean by that is that, so if we just go with this one again. I came up with that, but that's me doing the work for them. What if I were to say to them, here's a tool called Moodle. Here's how you use Moodle. I want you, the students, to come up with a set of categories of how you can approach the concept of modernity. Here are the possibilities. You come up with those categories. One of the cool things that will happen immediately is they're going to come up with categories I never thought of. Right? They're going to come up with categories that are beyond what I could even think of at this moment. And in that case, they're teaching me. And there's a learning going on for me, right? But also, even if they're categories that I know about, the important thing is that the students are producing this. Right? The students are empowering themselves and creating a society in which they know they can do. And that's important. Yeah? What would we assess on there? We could assess on participation, so we'll give you a mark just for getting there. We can assess on content, so did you, speak about the 7 principles of modernity or whatever, right? But now we can also start to assess on use of the digital tool. But you have to teach it. You can't assess anything you don't teach, right? So that means that one of your seminars has to be teaching Moodle. So what I did this year, I started that, and this came from an idea from David Beck when he was talking about having the students do videos. So I taught my students how to use iMovie. And they have a presentation they have to do in class. I said, instead of doing your presentation orally, I want you to make a movie using iMovie. I didn't tell them the content, I just taught them how to use iMovie. And part of what we're looking at here, although I didn't assess for that this year because this was just experimental, but I'm thinking that in the future I could assess for that. Part of what we're looking for is, how did you use iMovie? Did you use it to its potential, right? We have a few of these videos are really, really interesting, the way that the student did it. The one that's doing Verfremdungseffekt, Brecht here, is showing us the process of actually filming the video. So she got the point. The one with the Spanish flu has done made some kind of filter on it where the video looks old, around the corners. I don't know how that's done. Okay. Currently, I'm showing Prezi so that they can use Prezi, right? So we're going to have them use the digital tools to their potential, mark them for using the digital tools and for the content. And that's what I'm thinking is the potential of where we could go. I have some more points here on the digital tools, but I'll just email that to you because it's all explained on the Moodle itself. And I think what I want you to do in the last few minutes is to think about your own Moodle and your own module, okay? So let's just take a moment. You can write this down or you can type it in or just have it in your own head, however you want. I want you to think about a module that you teach or will be teaching or want to teach. And that module could have a Moodle to it. Yeah. And then I want you to think about what type of Moodle you would use of the 4 different types. Those aren't official types, it's just the way that I type them, right? It's my own typology. What type of Moodle you would use. That's going to be dependent on your type of module. Is it a research module? Is it something in which the students have to work through step by step? Or is it like that, big democratic modern world literature class that we have? Right? It depends also on the level of student involvement that you want. Do you want them involved to the level where they're going to be learning the tools? Yeah? Because then you got to teach the tools, right? And here's an interesting bit. You have to think about the level of comfort that your colleagues and bosses have with this, right? Some colleagues and bosses say, go ahead, right? The man who runs my department, David Morley, loves this. He says, go for it, do it. And I'm very happy to be working with 2 conveners that are very excited with it, right? Other people are not. I don't know about other departments. Other departments might not be happy with it. So, there's a balance in there, right? Then decide on the arrangement. So are you going to have weeks? Are you going to have just a grid in which they can go into what they want to go into? Think about what goes where. What to put where, yeah? Or, if you're not going to decide on what goes where, because maybe you want to do a fully student-produced Moodle in which the students decide what goes where. You can also assess them on a reflection about why they decided to put this here, so you're getting their process. Right? There's another way of assessing them. Think about the activities or resources. That's the part it'll be in the email that I send you, because we don't have time to go through all of them. But there were a lot of different activities and resources, and they're all self-explanatory. On the Moodle, if you just hover over the activity or resource, on the side, it'll tell you what it is, and it'll tell you how to do it. Okay, you're going to decide on your content as well. So just take a couple of minutes, think that, and before we leave, I want to hear a few ideas. Okay, we're out of time, so send me your email if you want this note, and I'll email it to you. If anybody has any questions after this, email me. If you start working on a Moodle and you want a bit of help with this end of it, the design end of it, I can talk to you about that. If you want help with the technical end of it, talk to Jim Joseph. And that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.